Yeah, so marijuana, it does help people, it puts people to sleep quicker, although I think that the question is whether it's really naturalistic sleep or not that they go into. Certainly with alcohol, it's not. That nightcap idea is a misnomer. Alcohol will it's a form of drugs that we call the sedatives, and sedation is not sleep. It's very different, but we often mistake one for the other.
Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host, the expert Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 346. Hope you're amazing as always. Do you know what? Today's topic is a really interesting one. I was looking around at what to teach today, or talk about today. Teaching, talking, whatever you want to call it. But one of the biggest topics that I come across, or the biggest things that hurt entrepreneurs, is sleep. Do you know what I mean? Sleep in general, especially if you're a parent, you're not probably going to get much, especially if your kids are young, right? But sleep is one of the biggest things back in the day that affected my life. I could never, ever sleep. My mind would always be on the go, thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the past, thinking about what I should do next, worrying, concerned, anxious. So you'd lie in bed, and maybe you can relate to this, You'd lie in bed or you'd go to bed and your mind wouldn't stop, and then you'd be, you might as well get up, right? Or you might as well put your phone on, and you might as well just watch anything you can until you fall unconscious. Probably not the best strategy, especially when it depends on what you're programming your brain before you go to sleep. Remembering that we have, when we're sleeping, we're having no conscious resistance. So it's going straight into the unconscious mind, straight into the software. So you best be damn careful what you're watching or listening to before you're sleeping. It was actually funny because I was talking to my uncle when I was back in the UK. And he's a crazy guy from Liverpool. He's funny. He's really funny. But he made me laugh so much. Do you know what he was listening to before he went to sleep? Well, actually watching before he went to sleep. And he was wondering why he was having issues with anxiety and stuff. And I was like, what are you watching? And he's like, well, actually, he didn't tell me. His wife told me. He watches truck crashes. And I'm like, what? And he gives it, I found these channels. I watch truck crashes every night before I go to bed. And I'm saying, what the hell are you talking about? He gives it a fact it's soothing. Anyway, that's it. He's got a few issues I probably need to help him with. But whatever you're putting in your brain is actually building the patterns of your focus. So it's a way that you can actually solve problems. So you can ask questions, and that becomes your dreams, process it, and then it comes out a solution at the end. That's what really dreams are for. But when we're having high anxiety, when we're feeling a lot of pressure, when we're overwhelmed and we're dealing with so many different parts, right, in our life, it can really stress our nervous system out. And then our nervous system is on constant reaction mode, which means we're not going to go into the correct Rem sleep or the correct circadian rhythm. And that causes issues. It causes issues with chemical production in the brain. It causes issues with, you know what it's like to try not sleeping for 3 days properly. How's your focus? How's your energy levels, right? What's your mood like? For me, I get grumpy. And it doesn't matter what I do, I just can't shift that grumpiness, And that's why I take control of it, so I make sure I'm getting enough sleep. Does this make sense? I hope this is making sense, because I remember back in the day, I was just saying, when I was 27, 28, putting together the resort in Fiji when I was living in New Zealand. Man, I just could not sleep for probably 2 years. I just couldn't sleep. And it's horrible. It's horrible. You'd lie on the couch and do whatever it was until you just passed out, and then drag yourself to bed. And it's not a good thing, right? It's not a good thing for your health or anything. And so what I wanted to cover today is a couple of clips from an amazing neuroscientist who specializes in sleep called Matthew Walker. And the cool thing is he's from the UK. Yeah. So I'm going to play a couple of these clips because he's a beast. And if you don't know this interview or who he is, you're going to want to after this. He's really, really cool. And do you know that we're supposed to be getting between 7 to 9 hours of sleep? Think about that. Are you getting that? Possibly not, right? And that's what you got to do for optimal sleep. So sleep is something that we all have to do. All animals have to do it. Everybody seems to have to do it. It's very, very strange that we even have to sleep. I have no idea, but this is what we got to do as human beings, right? So what I wanted to show is these clips today. You'll get a lot of insight, and one of them is actually about insomnia. So that's why I wanted to show it, because I had insomnia for years and years, and it's a horrible way of being. I think I've said that before, right? About 12 times in the past couple of minutes. But this is how important sleep is. So what I want to do is share these clips and really hope that it opens you up and helps you solve this sleep thing. And honestly, it's probably a program or a system I'm going to bring out in the future of how to optimize people's sleep and how to program the brain during sleep. Sound good? Awesome. So we're going to get into this episode, but just before we do, you got to help yourself. I've got a couple of different ways to help you. One, what have we got? Well, we got a podcast. We're up to 346 episodes. Pretty epic. Hopefully you're enjoying them. Hopefully you're writing me reviews, whether it's on iTunes or it's on Spotify. That would be amazing. I'd love you for it. What else? Well, another way, if you are scaling your business from 6 to 7 figures, or you're really new and you just want to make sure you get everything right online, then you've got to come and hang out with me and Ryan Alford. Yeah, we got the Radical Formula launching. The webinar should be up this week. We've also got a training there that you can go to right now on the radicalformula.com. And it's a badass 15-minute training. And it's going to let you know so many tips and tricks that you can take away. But the webinar is not really a webinar. It's just badass. It's got 7 key points that Ryan's on a screen. He's writing. I cover some brilliant stuff with the snapback and the consumer versus investor. And those are cool things that I know are holding people back from hitting that to that next level. So we've got that launching. Go to theradicalformula.com and have a little look around, and you will discover something awesome. And then, hey, why don't you join our community? It's pretty epic. We get to go live with you every single week. You get a badass mastermind, you get a badass membership site, and you get a global community instantly. And we've made it so affordable for you. And considering we're some of the best in the world at what we do. So what else? Trader? You're trading the old crypto. What about crypto? What about options, Forex, and futures? Trading anything online. Yeah, whether you're a pro or you're an amateur, we have something that is the most foundational. It's called the Genius Trader. It's 6 levels of awesomeness and a badass community that you can come and hang out with straight away. Loads of tips, loads of tricks, but really the idea with the Genius Trader is to give you total mastery of your mind in every aspect. So trading is a byproduct of you performing in your own mind first. So that is what the Genius Trader is all about. It's changing people's lives, and I want it to change yours. So easily go to the show notes to get all these links, or you can go to thegeniustrader.club and watch that free training, and it'll let you know all about it. Sound good? I hope so. I hope you're doing these things for yourself. Hope you're taking action, and I hope that you're making 2022 the best year of your life. That's what we're here to do. So speaking of best years of your life, let's jump in and go meet Matthew, and let's get some sleep on the go. But make sure that you're heading over to the show notes or heading over to the Radical Formula or thegeniustrader.club, or just come and hang out with me, Andy Murphy Mindset, on all social media platforms. So go and do that now, and let's do this. I'll see you at the end of the show.
You know, I'll do 3 different hotels in a week because I'll do like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like with gigs. And then by the time Sunday rolls around, I'm a mess.
You're in rough shape.
Yeah. Is that what it is?
Yeah. And it's a threat detection thing. That, if you look at other species, they can do this much more impressively than we can. So dolphins or any sort of sea-dwelling mammal can actually sleep with half a brain. So one half of their brain goes into deep sleep. The other half is wide awake.
That's how people at the DMV do it. Those people that work at the Department of Motor Vehicles, they work half asleep. You ever meet them?
I haven't, no.
Just teasing you.
I will,
if you're DMV listening, going, fuck you, man. Next time you come in to get your license renewed.
There's my next NIH grant, I think, looking at the DMV and sleep. But yeah,
TSA workers, same thing. Same type of human.
That I've come across.
Yeah. Them too. I'm just kidding, fuckers. Relax. So when you're in a hotel room, what is happening that half your brain is not really sleeping?
Yeah, so there's different stages of sleep. There are 2 principal types. One is non-rapid eye movement sleep, or non-REM sleep. The other is REM sleep, which is also known as dream sleep.
Right.
And non-rapid eye movement sleep is further divided into 4 separate stages, which are unimaginatively called stages 1 through 4. We're a creative bunch as
easy to remember.
Researchers. It is true, but I think it's also our low IQ. But it's the deep stages of sleep, 3 and 4 of that non-rapid eye movement. That's where a lot of sort of body replenishment takes place, great for the cardiovascular system, metabolism, all of those good things. But that's the deep sleep that one half of your brain will resist going into when you're sleeping in a foreign environment. So it stays in this kind of lighter stage, almost like a threat detection system.
Right.
And you can imagine why. It's an unusual context. Evolutionarily, it would make a lot of sense to just have that sort of on guard one half of the brain.
That makes so much sense. And that really, for me, it fills in the blanks of like why, even if I get, 7-8 hours sleep on the road, I'm still kind of just out of it.
Yeah, and that's in fact probably one of the most impressive parts of new research on sleep. It's not just about quantity, it's also about quality. And quality can be as detrimental if you don't get it as a reduction in total quality. I mean, both are essential,
right?
But I think it speaks exactly to your point. You just don't feel like it's a refreshing sort of deep sleep.
Yeah, it feels totally different. It feels like, I guess I would say it feels like half asleep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really kind of how it does feel.
Yeah.
So let me jump in, crew. Did you hear that, first of all, of what that means? Right. So what I was talking about before was not being able to sleep. And they're going to cover this in the insomnia bit in a few minutes. But understand, when you are not able to sleep, it's because, you're in that threat detection. Now, what was a brilliant example by Matthew was that through traveling, right? So if you've ever traveled, I'm an Airbnb fiend, do you know what I mean? All over the world, Airbnbs. But I never really get a good sleep in these Airbnbs. Whether it's a couple of weeks or sometimes a few months, it takes a while for me to really settle down and for it to feel like home. And now we know why, right? Because it's literally half of your brain. It won't go into those deep levels or stages 3 and 4 in REM sleep, where you get the deep sleep and your metabolism and you got that regeneration, right? So if we're not in that's why we can wake up and we're exhausted. Makes total sense. So because of this, we have to look at how we're going to sleep, right? And I'm sure they're going to discuss this more, but how we go to sleep becomes really, really important. Do you have a routine? Do you have a way that you can start winding down? Do you have a way that you can start to calm your breathing, switch over to the parasympathetic nervous system, start programming your brain for relaxation and performance even? Do you have that? Or are you just on your phone until you pass out unconscious? Only you know.
One of the things that I noticed, I did this thing with my friends called Sober October, where we didn't smoke any pot or do no drinking at all, nothing for a month. And when I did it, one of the things I found was that after about, I don't know how many days, but it was noticeable that I would have these incredibly vivid dreams. And then I had read that marijuana does something to suppress heavy REM sleep. Like what is happening there?
Yeah, so both of those chemicals, both of which are used as a sleep aid, alcohol and marijuana, are actually very good at blocking your dream sleep, your rapid eye movement sleep. And so what happens is that the brain is quite clever in this regard. It builds up a clock counter of how much dream sleep you should have had, but have not been getting. Whoa. And it starts to develop this increasing appetite and hunger for dream sleep, so that finally when the alcohol actually gets out of your system, Sober October, love the name, that's all of a sudden where you get what's called a REM sleep rebound effect, where you not only get the normal amount of REM sleep that you would normally have, you get that, plus the brain tries to get back some of that dream sleep that it's been losing over the past maybe 11 months. So you get this...
Try 20 years.
Yeah, I didn't want to make any assumptions. So you get this REM sleep rebounded effect, and that's where you have these really intense dream sleep situations.
Yeah.
It's the same reason that they'll say, like, I had a bit too much to drink last night, maybe it was a Friday or Saturday. They sleep in late. They say, I just had these crazy dreams. What happens there is a kind of an acute version where the alcohol is swirling around in your system. And after about 6 hours, your liver and your kidneys have finally excreted all of the alcohol. And your brain has been deprived of dream sleep for that first 6 hours. So then it feasts in the last couple of hours. And that's why you have these really bizarre dreams after you've been drinking a little bit too much.
Oh, wow. So what is happening with marijuana, though, specifically? Do you know?
Yeah, so marijuana, it does help people, it puts people to sleep quicker. Although I think that the question is whether it's really naturalistic sleep or not that they go into. Certainly with alcohol, it's not. That nightcap idea is a misnomer. Alcohol it's a form of drugs that we call the sedatives, and sedation is not sleep. It's very different, but we often mistake one for the other. Marijuana, it seems to act in a physiologically very different way. It doesn't target the same receptors in the brain. So it's unclear whether the speed with which you fall asleep after having a session with marijuana is actually natural sleep. Let's assume it is. The problem, however, is that it then will start to disrupt REM sleep. It will start to block the process. We think perhaps at the level of the brainstem, which is where these two types of sleep, non-REM and REM sleep, will actually get sort of worked out. That's where marijuana may actually impact dream sleep and shut it down and block it.
Have there been any studies on chronic marijuana smokers, like those dawn to dusk type characters that just are constantly high, and what happens to their brain from not, because they must never hit REM sleep?
Yeah, so people haven't looked at marijuana. They have looked at alcohol, though. Exactly that. So what happens is if you look at alcoholics, they will have something often when they come off alcohol, something called delirium tremens, which is where the sort of DT, there what happens is that the alcohol has been blocking dream sleep for so long, and the pressure for dream sleep is built up so powerfully in the brain, it actually just spills over into wakefulness.
Whoa.
And so the brain just says, look, okay, if I'm not going to get this dream sleep whilst you're asleep, I'm just going to take it whilst you're awake. And so you start to essentially dream while you're awake. It's this sort of collision of two states of consciousness. So you get delirium.
Wow. I always thought the DTs were detoxing. When someone said someone's going through the DTs.
Okay, yeah.
So it's delirium tremor?
That's delirium tremens, yeah.
Trems.
Sort of.
So, did you understand that? I hope so, right? So the body regenerates in stage 3 and 4, right? But if we're constantly using alcohol, which is actually a sedative, although marijuana isn't a sedative and activating different parts of the brain, it is still disrupting the REM sleep. And that's not good, right? So it's like everything shouldn't be done every day. Everything shouldn't be done every day. And what was wild is DTs, right? We all thought that was detoxing, didn't we, right? The DTs. But it's not. It is delirium tremens. And what was wild, right? If you think about like alcoholics who are really, really bad alcoholics, they can be crazy, right? They're talking to themselves out loud, and we call that in neurolinguistics audio digital external, but it's really an inner conversation that you're having externally, right? So that's what's happening, but really they're in dreamland because there's like an overflow of this dream, that pressure that's been built up, and the dream state sleep overflow. And that's just wild, man. That's wild. So what does it mean? Like everything, it has to be done in moderation. Everything has to be done to a point of what is the performance or the consequence, cause and effect, right? Everything's cause and effect. What's the cause? Getting hammered. What's the effect? Not going into REM. What's the effect of that? Well, we're not regenerating correctly, so your brain is not going to be on high performance. Now, there's nothing wrong with weed, and there's nothing wrong with alcohol. I don't drink. But when you start to understand this, it makes you look at things a different way, right? So let's keep going.
So what is going on with them when this is happening? So if they are going through this delirium during the day while they're conscious, what's physiologically happening?
So it's almost as though the veil of REM sleep gets pulled over the waking brain, as it were. So you have this mixed state of consciousness that you can pick up with brainwave recordings.
Wow.
And it just tells me, I mean, in some ways, how necessary sleep must be. If that's the lengths that the brain will go to get that which it's been missing, just shows you why, it took Mother Nature 3.6 million years to put this thing called an 8-hour sleep necessity in place. And we've come along, and within the space of 100 years, we've lopped off almost 20% of that, if you look at the data.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Whew. And so many people take pride in that, too. I don't need 8 hours sleep. I got 3. I'm good. Ready to go. Kick ass and dominate the world.
Yeah. It's the sort of like sleep machismo sort of attitude.
There is a lot of that, right?
Yeah. And
Not me, baby. I like sleep.
Well, I mean, and you'd be glad to know that then, men who sleep 5 to 6 hours a night will have a level of testosterone which is that of someone 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep will age you by a decade in terms of that critical aspect of wellness, virility, muscle strength,
10
sexual
years.
performance.
That's incredible.
What was crazy, wasn't it, years ago? I think people are realizing that they were full of BS, meaning that there was like a pride. It was a pride to not getting sleep and keep going and pushing and pushing and pushing. But what are we showing in this episode? Yeah, we're showing it actually ages you because you cannot regenerate correctly. So 10 years, they're talking about testosterone production, obviously, in that last comment, but 10 years. So what other effects is that having on the body? That's why people, I suppose, who you look like they partied, like when they were younger, well, you can tell when they were older how much they partied, right? Because it's probably sleep deprivation, and then they're not being healthy, and etc., etc. So what we're going to jump into now is the next part, and that's all about insomnia.
What should someone do if they have a hard time sleeping? Like, say if you're a person who has insomnia, you have a hard time getting to bed, you have a hard time staying asleep. When you wake up, you can't go back to bed.
Yeah.
Are there strategies?
There are. I mean, I think for most people, there are 5 things that you can do just out the gate to get better sleep. Regularity is probably the most important thing I can tell you. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, no matter whether it's the weekend, weekday. Regularity is key. We've spoken about light. For example, when you, in the last hour before bed, try to stay away from screens, but also just switch off half the lights in the house. You would be surprised at how soporific that is. It really starts to sort of make you feel a bit more drowsy. They've done some great studies where they would take people out, into the Rockies, no electric light, no electricity whatsoever. And they started to go to bed 2 hours earlier than their acclaimed natural bedtime. It wasn't just because they didn't have anything necessarily to do. It was that their melatonin was rising, 2 hours earlier. So keep it dark. The third is probably keep it cool. Your brain actually needs to drop its temperature by about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate sleep. And that's the reason that you will always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that's too cold than too hot.
I've seen people use cold pads.
Yeah.
Have you seen those? You sleep on these cold pads? What do you think of those?
Yeah, I mean, the evidence is pretty good that cooling the body actually works. They've, in the book, I write about a series of studies where they had people in, it's almost like a wetsuit, but it has all of these veins running through it. And they could actually perfuse warm or cold water into any part of the body, hands, core of the body, feet, and so that you could exquisitely manipulate the temperature of any part of the body. And what they found is that they could effectively cool the body down, and it instantaneously made people fall asleep faster, and it gave them deep non-REM sleep, that sort of restorative sleep for the body. So, and you can even look at studies where people sleep semi-naked, and that also seems to improve their sleep, and they get a little bit more deep sleep too. So cold is better. The paradox here, though, is that you need to warm your feet and your hands to kind of charm the blood away from your core out to the surface and radiate that heat.
Really? So you should go to sleep with socks and gloves on?
Yeah. Or better still, have a hot bath. Evidence here, too, that I discuss where people say, I get out of a hot bath, I feel nice and toasty, I'm relaxed, and that's why I fall asleep. It's the opposite. When you get into a bath, you get vasodilation. You sort of get rosy cheeks, red skin. All of the blood rushes to the surface. You get out of the bath, and you have this massive thermal dump of heat that just evacuates from the body. Your core body temperature plummets, and that's why you sleep better. So you can hack the system very easily.
Wow. So your core body temperature plummets, and that's what makes you sleep easier.
Yeah.
That sounds so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
And it makes sense because that's how we were designed. If you look at hunter-gatherer tribes whose way of life has not changed for thousands of years, and you ask how do they sleep, one of the things that seems to dictate their sleep is the rise and fall of temperature. Temperature is at its lowest in the nadir of the night, 3 or 4 in the morning. And as that temperature, that climate temperature starts to drop, that's when they start to get drowsy, as if temperature is just sort of signaling to the brain, now it's time to sleep. So light as well as temperature are 2 key triggers to help you get better sleep. If you look at those tribes, by the way, and when they go to sleep and they wake up, they go to sleep probably at 2 hours after dusk, sort of 8 to 9 in the evening, wake up about half an hour, even an hour before dawn. It's the rise in temperature rather than light that triggers their awakening. Wow. But there's a reason, have you ever thought about what the term midnight actually means? Middle of the night.
Right.
And that's what it should be for all of us. But in modernity, we've been dislocated from our natural rhythms. And now midnight has become the time when we think, I should check Facebook last time, I should send my last email.
Yeah.
That is not how we were, designed to sleep. And in fact, we may also be designed to sleep biphasically too. If you look at those hunter-gatherers, they don't sleep one long bout of 8 hours at night.
Yeah, I've heard this recently, that you should have 2 sleeps. The idea of 2 sleeps.
Yeah, it's actually a little different than the idea of 2 sleeps. So there was a time in sort of the Dickensian era where people would sleep for the first half of the night, maybe sort of 4 hours or so. Then they would wake up, they would socialize, they would eat, they would make love, and then they would go back and have a second sleep. If you look at natural biological rhythms in the brain and the body, that doesn't really seem to be how we were designed. It certainly seems to be something that we did in society, but I think it's more of a societal trend than it was a biological edict. However, we do seem to have 2 sleep periods. the way that we were designed. Those tribes will often sleep about 6.5 hours, 7 hours of sleep at night. And then, especially in the summer, they'll have that siesta-like behavior in the afternoon. And all of us have that. Sort of this, what's called the postprandial dip in alertness, just means after lunch. And if I measure your brainwave activity with electrodes, I can see a drop in your physiological alertness somewhere between 2 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
But is that dependent on diet?
It's not. People think it is, especially after they've had a heavy lunch.
Yeah.
You can actually just have people fast and sort of, fasting for long periods of time actually makes your sleep much worse. But you can have people abstain from lunch and you still get that drop. So it's independent of food. It's a genetically hardwired, pre-programmed drop that suggests we should be sleeping biphasically.
But is that dependent upon their standard diet? Because if someone is on a carbohydrate-rich diet, a lot of times you do get that spike and then you crash. But when people are on low-carb and high-fat diets, they don't get that, and they tend to be more even with their energy through the day?
Yeah. So yeah, that sort of more constant release of energy can actually help you sort of almost combat that lull.
But that lull exists no matter what.
Exactly.
So even if you don't think it exists, it's there.
It's still present.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So why did they do that in the Dickens era? Why did they? What is there a root cause of their double sleep thing?
We don't know. I mean, it's hard to sort of really go back.
Fascinating.
It's incredible.
That was a trend.
Yeah, that it was a movement.
That they would just wake up and do things and.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because they didn't have TV. And they didn't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah. Well, sounds like they did some pretty interesting things, which were nice. But yeah.
Well.
Okay, crew, let me jump in there. I was going to jump in quite a few times, but I just let Matthew talk, Oh, and Joe talk. But let's reiterate those, because the last two were cut off this actual clip. So we might as well teach you those, right? So number one was regularity. Regularity, what does that mean? It means get to bed at the same time. So your body clock, if you want to call it that, gets used to it. So you've got certain routines, habits. Remember, we are creature of habits. And what that means is we have micro habits, which leads to a bigger habit. So get to bed. That's what it means. Get to bed at the same time, no matter what. So number two is light. This is essential for me. I sleep with a sleep mask. No matter where I travel, no matter what's going on, the sleep mask is so important. Like my bedroom's here, it's cool, it's dark, but still I use a sleep mask. And that's become kind of an anchor, meaning the sleep mask is actually anchored to me sleeping. So by putting that on, it actually helps me go into a faster, deeper sleep. So number three, well, that's cool. Be cool. Not just be cool, but be cool, right? Make sure that man, think about a cave. You know what I mean? A cave's cool. That's where our genetics come from. So we've got to follow that. And the brain, well, it decreases its temperature by about 2 to 3%. So that's important, right? It's important. And that's why he was talking about also a little siesta in the afternoon. These Europeans, they got it right? You know what I mean? Enjoying life, doing awesome things, and then having a little sleep in the afternoon. Makes sense. Then number four was removing, obviously, caffeine and nicotine. Both are what? You got it. Stimulants. They're uppers. They're going to keep you awake. And number five, do you want to know what it is? A little drum roll. Food. Your body needs to have its energy where? Well, it needs to be in regenerating you, not processing food. So by eating late at night, you're basically all your blood flow, everything goes to processing that food, and it's not then used to regenerate you at a cellular level. So there's my 5 things, and well, not mine, it's kind of Matthew's, right? Matthew Walker. Go and check him out. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you got some things from that, and hopefully you know now why sleep is so important. So if you're one of those people, I can only manage on like 4 or 5 hours, then maybe you can. But you'll want to, I think it's like, is it 0.5% or 1% in the world who can do that? So the rest of it's probably just willpower and habits. So yeah, there's the end of episode 346. Hope you loved it. And speaking of loving it, make sure that you are heading over to the show notes and either jumping on a couple of different links. What are they? If you are building an online brand and you want to hang around with me and Ryan Alford, Ryan Alford's worked with Apple, Verizon, the NFL, everyone you can imagine in marketing, and wants to show you all the tips and tricks of how he does exactly that. So, and me, yes, me, giving you mental performance strategies, not motivation, mental performance strategies that I've taught to some of the best in the world. We've come together and created something called the Radical Formula. And this is where we engineer your success. This is Success Engineering 101. Badass mastermind, so much involved. Go there now. Crazy discounted. Yeah, crazy discount. Go and grab it because we're about to launch and you can be one of the beta testers. So theradicalformula.com. Go check it out. If you're a trader and you're wanting freedom, whether you're a pro or getting started, what you need the foundation. You need the basics to make sure that you have complete mental mastery. Where'd you find that? I hear you asking, Andy. Well, go to theradicalformula.club. Check out the training on both of those links and join us wherever you choose fit. So now make sure that you're hanging out with me. Where? Everywhere. Make sure you're hanging out with Andy Murphy at Mindset on all platforms, and let's connect. Let's ask questions. Let's make this year your best year ever. Let's do this. And speaking of doing it, head over to those show notes and you can have an amazing week. Until the next time, much, much love. But oh yeah, one more thing. Why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.